All right, and welcome back to Book Review, the podcast about reviewing books, and we are continuing for part 2 of The Great Gatsby. And for today's episode, I have a different guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Henry. Thank you for having me.
All right, you a high school student, man?
Yeah, in 10th grade right now.
All right, so that means you haven't read The Great Gatsby, have you?
No, not yet. I think that's an 11th grade thing.
Yeah, it kind of is, but all right, I'll go ahead and tell you a bit about it. Basically, it is about Nick Carraway, who is Gatsby's neighbor, and the story takes place in America in the 1920s. Nick has just moved from the Midwest to West Egg, Long Island, seeking his fortune as a bond salesman. Interesting, right?
Seems very interesting, yeah, kind of old.
Yeah, it's in the 20s, so it's a long time ago. And I will read you a quote from The Great Gatsby. You ready?
Yeah.
It says, "It is up to us, who are the dominant race, to watch out for these other races who will have control of things." What do you think that means?
I feel like that's kind of a messed up quote, just first of all, and I feel like it's trying to say that, like, a race, I'm guessing, like, normally, like, would be a European or, like, white, to be, like, above or, like, better in some way, which is obviously, like, not true.
Not true, yeah.
And, like, stopping other races from, like, gaining wealth or gaining, like, status in society, I guess.
Yeah, because at this time, whites are, I don't want to say it, but I guess dominant in that they are mostly upper class. Well, most upper class people are, in fact, white during that era.
Yeah, they're, like, upper class, they have more power, they have, like, more power within the government and stuff like that, so, like, I can see for sure how there's a connection between, like, ethnicity.
Yeah, how they see, like, that they, at that point, feel dominant, like they're better than everyone, all right? And speaking of which, here's another quote, similar to what we were talking about. It says, "I almost married a little kike who'd been after me for years. I knew he was below me."
Wow. So that's, like, referring to, I'm
guessing, a Jew, yeah.
To a Jewish person. That's a really messed up quote. Like, that shouldn't, like, stop you from going into relationships with someone or dating someone or anything. That's...
Yeah, just based off of he was Jewish, she knew he was below her.
Yeah, that's messed up, and they're really not, like, above or below. Everyone's just kind of equal. That doesn't really matter, like...
Did this happen, like, during World War II? Like, the 20s?
I think that happened, like, before, like...
So before Hitler, this was...
Yeah, before Hitler even happened. So, like, the 30s was, like, the rise of, like, nationalism in, like, Germany in, like, the 1930s, and this was, like, after World War One. So, like, a lot of Germans were in the U.S. at this time.
All right. So, okay. And speaking of Jews, here's another quote about one. It says, "A small, flat-nosed Jew raised his head and regarded me with 2 fine growths of hair, which had luxuriated in either nostril. After a moment, I discovered his tiny eyes in the half-darkness." Really depicts Jews in a really bad way.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of surprised, like, how people, like, how the culture was back then and how, like, people are so, like, anti-Semitic in this way. And, yeah, it's really culture shock almost, like, that this was, like, the same country but just a different time period, and, like, how people referred to Jewish people.
Yeah, they would not get away with this now if he wrote that.
Yeah, no, like, this book, like, it's a complete culture shock for me.
Yeah, it's just something interesting to think about, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Well, moving on from Jews, here's an interesting one. Quote, it says, "As we crossed Blackwell's Island, a limousine passed us, driven by a white chauffeur in which sat 3 modish Negroes, 2 bucks, and a girl." So, well, not the last 2, but I feel like we should really focus on what he first saw, which was the white chauffeur and the 3 modish Negroes. So, I guess during this time, the roles were a bit reversed, because you'd normally see at that time a black man driving a white man, not the opposite, which means it's interesting that a rich African Americans were quite a rare scene to see back then.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of strange to see that at this time period. I feel like they made a point of it, kind of showing how it's a strange, like, occurrence, like, almost like a reverse role, almost. But definitely that's something more common you have this, like,
now with all, like, young upcoming, I guess, musicians being African American.
Yeah, a ton of celebrities, sports stars, actors, and whatnot.
Yeah, it's like African Americans are now just in the really part of the culture nowadays.
Yeah, they really are. Things have really changed from now.
Yeah.
From then.
And final quote that I have, it reads, "They'll throw everything overboard and have intermarriage between black and white." So that's a big one.
Yeah, totally a big one. Like, that's like showing how people did not like approve of like people of
interracial marriage.
Yeah. And it's kind of showing like in the 20s how people were like against.
They were just for more traditional practices.
Yeah, like same race or whatever.
Like
not,
eugenics.
Yeah, like not mixing or whatever. But today, there's totally still like, I'm not like sure, at least in this part of the country, in California, there's less of a stigma regarding like interracial relationships.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm biracial, so.
Yeah, and like I'm like half Mexican, and like half like white, but like in other places in the world, and especially like in the South, you can totally still see like almost like the stains of the past. People are still like kind of stuck in those ways of the past.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to end that on a sour note, but what do you think so far? I mean, there's a lot of bad quotes, but I feel like it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it seems like the book goes over some like powerful like social
heavy topics.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not all just racism, there's also sexism, class, like really shows the difference between like everyone's world.
Yeah, it really hits a lot of different subjects, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, these subjects are also just present today. I mean, we're still going through racism, sexism, classism, just all the big three.
Just, I feel like it's important to like remember and like to keep on educating yourself on these topics, like to try to prevent them, I feel like almost.
Yeah, it just shows like how two time periods can be like just so similar but yet so different. Yeah, it's like exactly. Much more hostile back then, but still just carried over from that society to today's society.
Yeah, exactly. It's like still kind of prevalent, but in like a different tone almost today.
Yeah, so you gonna read the book?
Honestly, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of motivated to look out and actually read it when the time comes, and I'm gonna probably do some sort of written project on it. I look forward to doing that. And also like maybe looking at the movies. I think there's a few actually that I might be viewing that might make it more.
Nah, the book's probably better though.
The book's better, yeah.
Yeah,
like
that's what I heard.
More detailed, yeah.
I mean, I'm in the middle of reading. I'm almost done. I felt like it's one of the greatest masterpieces of this time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm just like, I just want to thank my teacher for making me read it.
Yeah.
It was great. Like, this project was just a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
this
really
podcast,
was.
Like, I was so motivated by that book. I just made a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Just dedicated to it.
You gotta spread the topic.
Yeah, I just gotta spread awareness of racism. Because it's just an issue now. I mean, we gotta stop it. Like, 50 years from now, someone could be doing this right now, talking about racism. We'll never know. Well, I'll know.
Exactly. I'll be doing the same thing next year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that concludes another episode of Book Review. Thank you all for listening, and I will catch you later.